It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Hello. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. And you could find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting by emailing me at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. Be sure if you like our show to check out our Patreon. Got a ton of new stuff on Patreon. And our archives are free at Spreaker.com. I do a live show every Friday night at Spreaker. All the new podcast material comes out on Friday nights. Live show 8 p.m. 9 p.m. is one of the podcast interviews I do. And then 8, 9, 10 p.m. another podcast interview. I think that, I don't know, I've only been doing this 10 years. Who the hell knows what time I do it? Okay. Hey, let's see here. Patreon got a ton of good stuff. I think I have a fever. Okay. I'm definitely getting sick. I made some seafood stuff last night, man. I was throwing up in the middle of the night. Like, I was throwing up like a whole stomach full of food. I didn't even want to think about it. And then all day today, I think I got like a fever coming on, and I'm definitely getting sick. I never used to get sick my whole life. I was so damn healthy. You should have seen me. When you see some pictures of me, I was so healthy, man. Now my health is just so bad. I'm just dying here. I'm dying. You know, I got another couple of years left, man. I don't think I got that much time. You go to Patreon, and I did a show about that train derailment over there in East Palestine, Ohio, and I did one previously, but this one is really with someone who lived through it, and we went through step by step what it was like that night. And her poor little baby has rashes now, and whenever they drive into town, there's some days the chemicals are still affected. This rail company, Norfolk Railroad, Norfolk Southern Train, has bought up this whole town. They've bought up the cops. They've bought up everywhere. And they're doling out little chump change here to people to buy shampoo and things to survive on. The property values are down to nothing. Just a heartbreaking story there. You could find it on Facebook. You could follow this group called Unity Council for EP Train Derailment. So there's an interview there in my Patreon. Two-part interview with William Dorsch about his book, Omnipotent, Don't Ask, Don't Tell, about John Wayne Gacy, stuff you're not going to find anywhere about Gacy. This is really good exclusive stuff I got here from this guy. And people still talk about the first interview I did with him about 5 years ago. Gonna have him come back again, man, to talk about the work he does with the Innocence Project. I like this guy, man, William Dorsch. Have him back. Let's see here, what else? Some old repeats. Libby Handros, Trump, What's the Deal? She had done this documentary film about Donald Trump way back in 1988. And she talks about stuff you don't hear about no more either, too. You know, when Trump was having a beef with his casino down there, some of his casino executives died in this weird plane crash, very suspicious. And, of course, Trump's helicopter pilot was a drug smuggler, Going to be talking about Mr. Trump, President Mr. Trump, later on in the portion of the show called Do Your Research. You need to do your research, Mr. Opperman, and do your research. I shall. I shall do my research. How would I do that? How do you do your research? Well, you put on YouTube. You put on YouTube there, and you Google, and you read other people's books and articles, and that's how you do your research today. Quinn Mitchell into the tussle. This is a young man, about 15 years old, who's on the campaign trail up there in New Hampshire, covering all the candidates. And good old Ron Bootgate DeSantis was running around those high heels. No wonder this guy's so obsessed about trans, all that kind of stuff, man. The guy's wearing women's shoes there, high heel shoes. Ron DeSantis. So he kicked this kid, Quinn Mitchell, asked him a question about not recognizing the results of the election and respecting that. And he got roughed up and kicked out by the old DeSantis goon squad that we're used to dealing with down here in Florida. Cindy, relentless for you. Utah. Cindy talks to Ed Opperman about the satanic abuse in Utah. That's a show up there, too. I played that show last week, but it's up in the member section, too. Ad-free, commercial-free. Norman Schur selling Michael Jackson's memorabilia. That's a little old show. Chuck O'Celli interviews Ed Opperman. Good old Chuck O'Celli interviews Ed Opperman. And then leave some comment. Okay, listen, I love Chuck. Okay, and I got to say I love Chuck because I want to strangle this guy. Okay, but if I were to strangle him, the headlines would say, Ed Opperman strangles blind man. Okay? The guy says to me, hey, Ed, let's do an interview. It'll be me interviewing you and you interviewing me, and we'll play it on both our shows. It'll help me promote I'm trying to get down to this JFK conference. Right? I said, okay, man, we can do that. Right? And I'm thinking, okay, how are we going to do this? I'm going to play my intros. I'm going to play his intro. So we're about to do the interview, and he goes, I'll tell you what, I'll just interview you. Okay. And I said, okay, whatever you want, Chuck. Whatever you need, man. Whatever you need, Chuck. Whatever you need from Ed Opperman. Ed Opperman's here to serve you, Chuck O'Celli. And then he leaves this comment on my Patreon about, Ed Opperman never wants to have me on the show. We just agreed I was going to interview the guy, man. He turns around at the last second and says, I'm going to interview you. And the guy's, he's crazy, man. He's crazy. Oh, my God. I'm going to strangle him. I'm going to strangle a blind man. I'm going to do it. Okay, I'm going to take away his cane and his dog and kick him from behind, sneak up behind him and choke him out. Matt Sergio, two-part interview with Matt Sergio about the Beatles and all kind of occult situations going on over there at this location over there in the UK. Very interesting stuff. He's kind of following up on the work of Dave McGowan, about social engineering, Interesting stuff he's got there, too. And David Merkatz wrongly charged in the story of the wrongful arrest of a locksmith. I remember this interview. This guy was a pretty interesting guy. I don't know how innocent he was. Okay, well, he's a nice guy, and I enjoyed the interview. I remember. Then my shows from last... By the way, my show last week, man, I tell you, I started that show. My head was pounding. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, boom, boom. My head was pounding, man, because these jerks who bought the place upstairs. I don't know. I told you the story, right? The Eastern European woman, she was like a sugar baby when she bought the place upstairs. She was living upstairs. And got into a whole big fight with her sugar daddy, and the cops would come, and she'd fight with the guy's wife, and all kind of... It was crazy. And she'd be running back and forth. It sounded like it was a dog yapping up there, but it was this woman, this Eastern European language, whatever it was, And so she trashed the place, man. And I even called the cops that day, man. I never call the cops. But I could hear it banging up there and hammering and stuff like that. Thank God she didn't turn on the tub or something like that and flood the place out. But she trashed the joint. And so they sold it. And I tell you, man, my place is better than that place up there. And they sold it for a lot more than I bought this place for. And it was trashed on top of that, too. The cabinets were broken and stuff like that. Windows were broken. All kinds of stuff was trashed in that place. That paint splatter. So that's a little encouraging that I could sell this place here. And we'll see what I'm going to do. I'm kind of thinking about just chucking everything in. I'll put a tenant in here and then just drive around and explore the country, I got a really nice car now if I can keep up the payments. And just this place I want to go back to, man. I was thinking back today about when me and my daughter went to Santa Cruz to visit the college up in Santa Cruz. And I love that little town with that little amusement park. And we went there. We had so much fun. And it was a great memory, all those college trips, man, with my daughter were such a beautiful memory in my lifetime. And I was just talking to one of the women who used to work for me back in Staten Island. And her oldest child is now going off to college and college trips and stuff like that. I was talking to her about it. And it just made me thinking, oh, boy, I'd love to go back to Santa Cruz. I'd love to drive up and down the Pacific Coast Highway. I with my life the way it is now, I can't do it. I just can't I didn't tape any shows this week, man, but normally, I'm taping something every single day. And I'm just so miserable doing this now. And we're going to be getting into some of that with the do your research, Oh, we got to do your research because everybody, oh, God, what is happening? I started doing a show with the hope that could make a difference, and and share some knowledge and experience that I had in the world, some 24-hour news stories I was involved in, Sarah Palin case, Charlie Sheen, Zimmerman, all this stuff, man, the Tiger Woods stuff, all these 24-hour news stories I was involved in. I knew some behind the scenes. Big stuff, man, even like this. Let me tell you something, okay? I always thought, that when I'm dead and gone, that a lot of the stuff I've been involved in would come out, and that people would realize some of the things I've been involved in that I can't talk about, and they would go through these old shows with a fine-tooth comb, and when people realize some of the stuff I've been involved in, like certain topics that people talk about that they think they know so well. I've been intimately involved directly with the first-hand people involved, and their whole perception of the story and of these people in their lives is just so off and so wrong. And they've got all these theories about MK Ultra and all those kind of wild theories going on when it couldn't be further from the truth. There was molestation, there was abuse, drug addiction for sure, and mental illness. But all of this MK Ultra stuff is just so off the wall, But people think they know what they're talking about because they watch these YouTube videos and these podcasts, and now the worst of all, TikTok. I've been taking my old shows and making these little TikToks and trying to promote the TikTok. It's the Ed Opperman TikTok channel. You could find it. But even if you put in hashtag Opperman Report or the Opperman Report, I've got it's building up really quick. I just started doing hashtag the Opperman Report. And when I first did it, it was like 300. And then I got it to 1,000 and 5,000. It's like, 10,000 now. And Opperman Report or Ed Opperman are like to 40, 50,000, 80,000. In just a very short time. I've only been working on this a very short time. But I tell you, Facebook was bad, with people sharing disinformation and bad information. I remember I had that guest on, Corey Leviton, who was a Vegas fellow. He wrote that book. He co-wrote the book regarding the juice with Jeffrey Felix about the O.J. Simpson's prison guard in prison. And he would do this thing where he would write up these ridiculous articles. He made up that story about the sperm being in muscle milk or something like that, or in some kind of protein milk. And he said that there was cow sperm in it. And then with scientific studies that he researched, all this kind of made-up nonsense. And if you really thought about it, cows don't have sperm. Cows are women. Okay, bulls have sperm, and you can't milk a bull. So it's impossible to have cow sperm. It doesn't even exist. But he would post these things and post these articles, and people would believe it. And there's so much misinformation out there on Facebook. Those old forwarded emails, about Bill Gates said this at a college commencement speech, and who was that guy Kramer from remember when he shouted the N-word at the comedy club there, pretty much ended his career, and they said Kramer, I forget his real name, made this speech during his trial over the N-word case. There was no trial, about, you call me a racist, but so all this fake stuff. And I used to see this fake stuff, and I'd say to people, I say, that's fake, Well, it may be fake, but still the spirit of it is still, I agree with the sentiments. With Bill Cosby telling kids to pull up their pants, in some commencement speech, it's always like a college graduation commencement speech, they would have it. But now with TikTok, man, just the comments on there, and now they're even shorter than tweets, are just so pathetic and so sad. People are just so lost, and they're just so confused about things. It's just so sad, I'm talking about most of these little videos, this portion that we're doing now anyway, are mostly me being interviewed way back in 2013 about Epstein or about Charlie Sheen case or things I'm personally involved in. And people are trying to tell me, they're arguing with me, and telling me, "Oh no, Ed, you need to do your no." They don't call me Ed. They don't know who I am. They just think, hey, TikToker, you need to do some research, and then you'll understand that Mr. Trump is a great guy, and he kicked out Epstein from Mar-a-Lago. He chased him out of there, And by the way, that is something I've always wanted to talk about. The whole timeline with the Epstein membership at Mar-a-Lago. First, Trump claimed that he never had a membership. So it was 2002 when Trump made that comment in New Yorker Magazine, the Vicky Ward interview, where he goes, "I've known Jeff Epstein for 15 years. Terrific guy. He's a lot of fun to be with. He likes beautiful women as much as I do, many on the younger side." That was 2002 when he made that statement. He said he knew him for 15 years prior to that. So keep that in mind. Now, Epstein was still a member at Mar-a-Lago in 2006 when the grand jury came out with the indictment. When he was indicted for raping little girls. And he was still a member until 2008. He wasn't banned until 2008. We've had people on the show like Hopsick and others who think it was overdue to a real estate transaction competition with Epstein. He wasn't banned until like a couple of months before he pled guilty to those charges. Okay, so he was out on bail for 2 years, a member, a good standing at Mar-a-Lago. And don't forget, too, according to Mr. Wolf, Michael Wolf, who wrote that book, Fire and Fury, who was very close friends with Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon got him embedded there into the White House to write this book. According to him, the reason why they had the falling out, and according to Epstein, too, Epstein told this group of comedians that the reason why he was no longer friends with Trump was over morals. And he didn't like the way Trump used to hit on married women and do that little stunt where he would invite guys into his office and say, "Hey, I got these Playboy models, let's go hang out with them," and have the guy's wife listening on the speakerphone, then go hit on the guy's wife. So that story seems to be a lot more accurate than this wacky thing that Trump is banning Epstein because he hit on some teenage girl there. When, according to Maria Farmer and Annie Farmer, that Ivana Trump was running around with Maxwell helping her groom these kids. So and this is what the actual survivors say. This is what the actual people involved say. But I got to do my research because, I haven't spent enough time talking to him. I worked on one case. I vetted a dozen cases, talked to people like Hoffenberg off the air like for hours and hours and hours, but on the air for 10, 15 hours. The other Epstein survivors talked to them. Ed, no, well, I'm trying to get off the phone. Some of these people, I'm trying to get off, so I don't know, but I got to do research. So how would I do this research then? And a lot of times people, they've read a book, They've read a book about a certain case. I'll give you an example. Ariel Castro. Remember the guy there in Cleveland with Amanda Berry and those girls he had kidnapped in his apartment, his house there? And I had spoken to some people who lived in that neighborhood because the whole case seemed so suspicious to me. And if you Google Ed Opperman, Spreaker, Ariel Castro, I've told the story a few times. I did an in-depth report on it. My work actually researching that case by talking to people involved, not by Googling and not by reading articles and reading books. And a woman contacted me and she says, "Ed, you got that all wrong. I've read every book on the case and none of them mention Ariel Castro helping with the crime scene tape." And she said that how could he help with the crime scene tape? Because he was in custody. He had already been arrested. Well, meanwhile, I was talking about one of the previous, the De Jesus case that his daughter was friends with. And that his daughter was in prison for stabbing her own baby. And the daughter would run away and go live in that house. You don't hear that reported anywhere. That's not in any of the books, is it? You hear that on the Opperman Report. And I got to tell you something else, too. And I see people, researchers, okay, they like to Google stuff. And even after we find out that the guys who founded Google, the guys who run Google, are buddies with Epstein, and you don't think they can control what you see on Google, you know, you don't think that they can control if I Google something and you Google something, that I get different results than you get, okay? All right? Trust me, they can, okay? But on top of that, they're definitely going to control the narrative, right? So, and we're going to rely on that. But also, too, you got to remember, you know, I interview authors of books for a living. I interview several a week, okay? And it's better to interview an author of a book who's using his real name than some anonymous researcher with a... Oh, you want to hear something funny? Yeah, you're going to love this, man. You remember how I would always come on and say, oh, this YouTuber named Dippity Dip Top. Okay. And I would make these funny names up of what the YouTuber's name was. There turns out, I'm not going to say his name because the guy, I watched his videos. This guy runs a true crime YouTube channel, and he uses one of those silly names that I would say all the time. And he contacts me and he goes, you know, Ed, you complain about my show all the time, but, you know, clearly you must like it if you know my name so well. And so I look up the guy's name, and the guy runs, and it's a decent channel. I don't want to give him a beef. Okay. But I just thought that was funny. I don't know. Maybe I'm not making any sense. I got a fever. I'm half dying here anyway. I'm on my way out. Oh, how about this whole thing this week about Matthew Perry dies, right? So right away, people start thinking, oh, Matthew Perry, he died suspiciously. They got him because he was just about to start releasing all the information he had on Hollywood pedophilia. That's the go-to thing now. Anybody that dies, right away, they were just about to release all this information about Hollywood pedophilia. Let me tell you something, guys. Okay, first of all, Matthew Perry hasn't done anything on TV or movies since 2017. The guy's out of the loop. Okay, which happens to people, you know, and just because you're a well-known name in the media or you had a TV series doesn't mean that you're suddenly given access to all insider, top secret information and cults and the pedo rings and all, you know, that everybody's fascinated with nowadays, you know. It just doesn't work that way, you know. People, you know, that poor woman, Tia Tequila, you know, and people think that, she's exposing the Illuminati. The poor woman is, you know, unwell, you know. And I knew her agent. Her agent was my agent. We had the same agent at one point in time, you know, and I knew a lot of personal things. And I was even involved with helping her when she got that overdose that night, you know. It was an accidental overdose, in my opinion. But, you know, I know these people. They don't have all this information you think they have, you know. And the people who know them intimately kind of, you know that they have problems and they're crazy, you know. Not anybody particular name I mentioned is problems are crazy, but you know, just how it is, you know. I was involved in a very, very, very big case in Vegas involving a major A-list star. Okay, and I know exactly what went down there, you know. And later on, everybody, it's an MK Ultra situation. No, it's not. No, it's not. So hopefully, I always thought that a lot of the stuff I've been involved in, and I'm talking about big stuff, not even this stuff, that it would come out after my death and people would, you know, respect my work, and suddenly, you know, posthumously, you know, somehow people would suddenly respect my work. Yeah, right. But it'll never happen now, you know, because I got to tell you, there's really no one to carry on my legacy after this and to put all that forward. Most of the people, you know, out there are an embarrassment, you know, to my life and my legacy, you know. I don't even know how to explain all of that, man. But hopefully one day we can. I can't see how. There's enough time. And I'm not going to start writing another book about all this stuff, and that would come out after my death because my daughter would be embarrassed by it, and not by me or my work. She's embarrassed by the people, these hysterical, fanatical fanboys that are obsessed with me out there, that are just so childish and immature, that are researchers, the researcher community. And it's embarrassing, man, to be associated with these people. I'll give you an example. Okay? And I told this story. This story came out about this guy, Dr. Bill Weld. Okay, and I did a whole story about Dr. Bill Weld. And he had this hoax. He claimed to be a doctor and a lawyer in Nevada. And he had some kind of DARPA information about nanotechnology and all this nonsense. And then his son was, being sick and killed. And there was these wacky hosts, Kerry Cassidy from Project Camelot, and this other wacky guy, Stephen Kelly, who made up that whole story about the 100,000 children under the gate. That guy's crazy, okay? And that story's just made up out of his head, man. That guy's nuts. Did a whole show about this. You can Google it and find it. I won't go into details about how he looks into this guy's background. It's all just BS, man, okay? But the fellow who was running this hoax about Dr. Bill Weld, see, when I heard the story, I contacted him, and I forget what I did. I figured out that he was making stuff up. I looked up that there was no doctor lawyer named Bill Weld, Dr. Bill Weld in Nevada. And the location where he claimed his offices was, at the time he would have had an office there was no roads there. This is before they had built the 215. There was a wide open desert in that area, okay, where he claimed to have his offices. At the time he claimed to have had it. It was just impossible. And it would be no reason to have an office up there, or a doctor or a lawyer in Nevada. So I contacted him, and ultimately he confessed that the whole thing was a hoax, and that he was really a guy named Justin Tribble, who was this notorious hoaxer who did other hoaxes. He was involved in the Columbine website as a researcher. But then he did the Joel Osteen retirement hoax, and he's an unknown hoaxer. So what happened was, when I outed him and I caught him, he got mad at me, and he started leaving these nasty comments on my YouTube channel, but under different names, and different fake accounts. And I had just done a show about Paul is Dead. And what this guy did was he wrote an article claiming to have been under a fake name, of course. And they put it on Before It's News, that website where you could just post any articles up there you wanted. And it was about Paul is Dead. And George Harrison claimed that he was exposing that Paul was really dead. It was before George Harrison's death. But the thing was totally fake, and that was written by Justin Tribble. And now people years later will say, "Oh no, Ed, I saw the article. It came out. There's a recording, and there's a whole, that's a fake article, man. And I know the guy's involved, But I'm just blowing in the wind here, man. Just blowing in the wind. No one cares what the reality is or what the truth is. They want to have tingles and and ooh. And then there's so much disinfo agents out there, man, purposely disinfoing you. But I was saying about the people, okay, I'm researching a situation. I read the book. I read every book on it. I interview these authors all the time, man, okay? And I talk to them off the air. Many times they come to me to help look up information for them that they don't have the ability or the capabilities to look up or find, okay? That's routine for a guy like me. Okay, and then I'll interview the author of the book, and I'm really not impressed with him. And then I'll start interviewing people that are in the book, and they're complaining to me about their relationship with this guy. So I know when you read a book, and it's a good book, it may be a well-written book, it may be a very interesting book. And when you read a book, what happens is your imagination, you start picturing images in your head of the things written in the book, and there's a whole story going, and you get lost in the book. Those are great books, man, right? You get lost in it, and you don't want the book to end. And it means so much, and you're sad when the book is over. Sometimes you even go back and you reread parts again, or you'll reread the whole book a year later, and that's great. But again, what is that? That's not reality. That's detached from reality. That's a fantasy in your head, images you've pictured in your head according to the way the book is written. it's a step away from the people actually involved in the case, because you have an author who's writing about it. Okay, and then it's a further step away because you're reading it. You're not. Trust me, when you read when I write something and someone reads what I write, they're not getting exactly 100% what I'm trying to say to them. Okay. Plus, then there's that whole thing of how things are imagined and created in your head, which is more of a reality to you than what actually happened in the original case to begin with. Okay, and all of these things are a problem. Okay, and what it does is it just detaches you further and further away from what the real facts and people that are actually related and involved in the actual circumstances that the book is written about. And there's no way to get around that. Then you got someone who read the book, and now he's going to write a tweet about it, he's going to write a TikTok comment on it, and then you're off in fantasy land. You know, and even myself, you know, I'm not Superman, you know. I get things wrong. I remember something incorrectly. It happens all the time. You know, this isn't a deposition. This is a stupid radio show. You know, when you take a deposition, okay, what happens is after you've sat down for a deposition, right, you and your lawyer will go over everything you said in the deposition. You'll look back at something and say, oh, no, I didn't mean to say that. Let me fix that. Okay, you have a chance to go back and correct your deposition, which you don't have when you're being interviewed by some stupid podcaster. Okay, and who doesn't really have much of an audience to begin with. I had so many interviews I did with just as favors, man. I'd see some young kid trying to start out, and I'd do him a favor. Yeah, sure, I'll do your interview. Okay, fine. And now 7 years later, I got to get grief over this, that someone misunderstood what I said. Give me a break. Give me a break. Give me a break. Break me off a piece of that Kit Kat bar. Okay, that's how we're doing on time, because I got to tell you, I am exhausted. And you know what? I kind of tried to talk about this a little bit last week. And I talked about the stuff about the Trump trial, especially that thing about his own accounting firm testifying against him and quitting. And I tell you, I thought I did such a horrible show last week because my head was splitting throughout the whole interview. But I got so many emails saying, "Geez, Ed, I had no idea about this account. Oh, thank you. Oh, Ed, that story was so funny." You know, I thought that was a horrible show. So sometimes I wake up the next day, man, on Saturday, I'm so sad about the show I did the night before. I just think, oh my God, that thing was just horrible. It made no sense at all. Believe it or not, some people, they love those shows. By the way, coming up tonight after this, the two shows I am playing tonight are, do I remember, Radio Gunk about Howard Stern. That was a really fun show. And then the other one is going to be Bart Camp about his book Prayer Man. Okay, and Bart Camp is going to be at that upcoming JFK conference. In fact, he's going to be introduced by Mr. Chuck Ocelli. Okay. Well, but maybe at the last second, Chuck will say, "No, I'm not going to introduce you. I'm going to do the interview." Okay. I'm going to do the presentation instead of you. And then complain that I never invited him back on the show. This guy's crazy, man. He's just crazy. Oh, God. Oh, my God. Okay. A couple of things happened this week. But anyway, so Prayer Man and then Radio Gunk, Howard Stern. Those are two good shows. A couple of things going on this week. Steven Tyler, by the way, is being sued by two young ladies who he sexually abused a long time ago. It's a long time ago. I had kind of known about this in the background, what was going on here. Let me see if I have this pulled up still. No, I don't. But I got to tell you that the law firm in New York, Jeff Anderson and Associates, is a very qualified legal team down there in New York that took on this case with one of these young ladies. I had some notes on this. Yeah, I think I really do have a fever. A couple of things. We had Eric Trump testify this week in the $250 million fraud case in New York State. The judge also just issued a gag order on Trump's lawyers about talking about his court clerk, what they think they're accomplishing by poking a stick at this judge. I cannot imagine what they think they are they're benefiting by poking a stick at this judge on social media every day. It's obviously he's paying attention, and people are telling him. And he's talking about how he's getting hundreds of packages and emails and phone calls at his office every day from these Trump cult followers annoying him. So Eric Trump testified this week, and it seems like he's been left holding the bag on a lot of stuff. First of all, it came out that in 2021 that Trump, remember how when he says, well, I'm putting my trust, my Trump organization trust in a blind trust, he went back in and took over the trust again in 2021, a year, not even a year later. He was running the business or knew what was going on in the company while he was president. People like Mark Meadows have to be aware of this, man. There's all kinds of ethics attorneys that work in the White House that have to know about this. This kind of stuff doesn't happen in secret. Just amazing. So Eric Trump testified this week, and it seems like his signature is on a lot of paperwork, man. Was well aware. He got caught lying. He was well aware of all these phony financial statements. And Ivanka Trump tried to file a motion so that she could avoid testifying. She's going to be testifying next week, early next week. And she filed this motion and throwing in there that, well, it's inconvenient for me because I live in Florida and it's a school week and I can't make the trial. Now, it's very common for people to file a motion to try and get out of their testimony. And usually they throw in there something about, I got a doctor, I have surgery scheduled, I have a trip planned, we already purchased the tickets, I don't have flight insurance. That kind of stuff. But to say I'm too busy because I got to take my kids to school, that's really, really unusual. Okay, that's really unusual. So she's not a defendant in this case. She was taken off that list by filing that. There was a hearing about that. But to try and get out of not testifying, I don't know how she can. So the judge ordered that was denied. Her motion was denied. She has to come testify this week. Truthfully, Eric Trump has testified truthfully. You know, he got caught. And Don Jr., too, as well testified. Now, you don't expect that when the defendants have to testify in their own case that they're going to confess to everything. But there's just like a little checklist of what you want to get from them, and then you bring it out in closing arguments. And trust me on this, they're getting it. The DA's office in this case is getting all of this. Tick, 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 as the days tick on. And you can kind of tell, too, in a long trial, when they're showing up for court and when they're leaving court every day, who's in a really good mood and who's not in a good mood when they're coming and going. And it's very clear that the prosecution, the DA's office in this case, is very pleased with what's going on. Then on top of that, the way the whole Trump side is just poking a stick at this judge, man, I can't imagine how they think that's benefiting them. And just filing these bizarre motions, like this motion to dismiss after Michael Cohen testified, and Trump was calling it a Perry Mason moment, you know, when they caught him lying about something. Michael Cohen, I don't see them needing him at all in this case, you know, whatsoever. So very bad news going on there. They just issued a gag order against Trump's lawyers. These penalties can only increase, and then we're looking at possible contempt jail time too. There was a bizarre complaint filed against the judge's law clerk about her making political donations, but the problem is these aren't even campaign donations. These are like political clubs, which, you know, you would be allowed to do. It's a bizarre, harassing tactic of the judge's law clerk, and I don't see how these guys think that this is helping their case. It was clear to me that motion to dismiss after the Michael Cohen testimony, on the same day that his accounting firm testified against him and had included a letter of resignation in their packet there, in their testimony, and they're saying in that letter that no one can use these financial statements because they're bogus. And Trump turns around, and this was definitely a motion done by the lawyers to appease their clients, demanding, let's do it today, let's fight. We caught the guy lying, but it's just a bad trial move. Now, I said, and I really think I should do a special show during the week just on the trial stuff, on the Trump court stuff. There was one day this week, the guy was in 3 courts at once, man. He had a hearing down there in Mar-a-Lago on the documents case, which is not looking good either. Okay, they're some of the biggest issues down there is that there's been some discovery that hasn't been turned over to the defense because the discovery is such secretive, top secret material that it can't even be turned over to, they don't even want to turn it over to the defense. Okay? So you can't say, hey, this has all been declassified, but on the other hand, it's still so classified we can't even show the evidence to the defendant. So I don't know how they're going to get around that. And the judge has already ruled that everything has to be treated like it's still classified unless it's been clearly marked declassified. So right there, that's already a judge ruling in that case. So how can they say, well, it's been declassified if the judge has already ruled, hey, unless it says declassified, it's going to be treated as classified? That's a tough hill to get over, even with that crooked judge down there, a very shady judge down there in Florida, man, with the Colombian connections. How this woman even got to this country and went to law school, who paid for all that? It's very unclear. But so you got the Miami. He was down there in Mar-a-Lago. He had a case. He had a case in New York State. Letitia James, $250 million case. But there's another one in Colorado, not the RICO case. There's another case trial going on in Colorado right now that's making very little news. And I've been watching this thing. It's only been televised twice, and I've been watching it. And let me tell you something, man. This is based on the 14th Amendment that Trump is disqualified by the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. That basically says, hey, if you try to overthrow the government, you can't run for president, okay? And it's to remove him from the ballot in Colorado. And let me tell you something. People aren't paying attention to this trial. They should be, because I think he's going to be removed from the ballot in Colorado, which means he loses, okay? The plaintiff in that case is putting on a nice, steady case. The Trump defense is very weak and sleepy, and they're trying to basically, it's all procedural errors. They're trying to attack the law. They're not really arguing his right to it's all like a technical arguments to win that case. So he would have to win on technicalities if they could win at all. It's looking bad for him there, and a lot of people aren't paying attention to that. And I think that's the one that Trump's going to lose. And people are going to say, what? How could he lose that? That's ridiculous. Because they're not paying attention to the trial. And it's just going to cause more division in this country, which I got to tell you, this whole Middle East conflict right now, I believe is going to be the tipping point for the division in this country. Okay, especially between the young and the old. So we're doing our time. I think we're done, man, and I feel like crap. So I think I'm going to end early. Check out Ed Opperman TikTok. There's some good quality TikToks on there, but I want to put up a lot more. And if you go on there, share my TikToks if you could, please, because I'm trying to drive traffic from the TikToks to the podcast link. And right now, during the Christmas season, is when the advertising revenue on podcasts is the highest. But the problem is, man, I'm not seeing it. The numbers are higher than last year, and not even 25% of what we made last year this month. And these 2 months, this is what you live on, okay, in radio. You live on the Christmas income. So if you're watching my Spreaker, man, please share those Spreakers, retweet them, post them on your Facebook and your Reddit and all your stuff out there, man. I got to get some traffic to those. I got to like double the traffic, man, to be honest with you. So we're trying to do these TikToks to drive traffic there. So if you can share the TikToks and check that out, go and follow my TikTok. That'd be a big help. Ed Opperman on TikTok. And follow all the hashtags on there too as well. All right, guys. Coming up next after this, we're going to be the show about Howard Stern with Radio Gunk. And then after that will be Prayer Man. Bart Camp. And there's a new book, Prayer Man, about the JFK book. JFK assassination book. All right, guys. Thank you so much. I can't think of anything else. If you want to send a donation, man, I could really use the money, guys. I ain't going to kid you. Okay. And like I said, I don't have a lot of time left. Okay. And I could have Ed Opperman to kick around much longer. But I still think I could take a blind man. All right, guys. All right, guys. Good night, good night, good night. I'll talk to you next week. Bye.